Hey everyone, this is Anthony with Bangin Beers Podcast here for another interview section. I think this is number 6. Let me double check my numbers here. Well, you know what? It's not important. It's just another interview here. I don't know what number it is. We've been doing a lot. This COVID, man, everything's just kind of jumbling together. This is number 5. Not number 6. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but number 5. I have on the phone with me Russ from the PA Brew Review. So we've been hitting up some really, really, in my opinion, top tier, Pennsylvania beer, so like media sources, or are sources that you can get information about Pennsylvania breweries. And, we did Breweries of Pennsylvania. Now we're doing PA Brew Review. So this is another great one. You can find them before we start. You can check them out on Facebook at PA Brew Review. You can go to pabrewreview.com. They have a full list of brewery maps in the area, event calendars, brewery lists. You can put in your area, and they'll show you everything that's in your immediate vicinity. And then you can also check them out on Instagram at PA Brew Review. Is there a Twitter as well? I didn't know if there was a Twitter. I'm sure there is.
There is, yeah. PA Brew Review. Just we don't use it very much, but it's there.
Yeah, I suck at Twitter. I'm so bad with it. We will tag it below. So if you guys are looking for it, just check out the links below, and all you gotta do is click on them, and it'll take you right to where you need to be. Here it is. I actually wasn't following you. Oh no, I was following you. All right, I thought I wasn't. I was like, oh boy, that's embarrassing.
I wasn't kidding. It's hard to know if you're following us or not because we don't put a lot of content on Twitter.
Yeah, most of my Twitter content is anything I just patch over from Instagram. You know how you can link it?
Yeah,
2 for 1, baby. That's what we do. But yeah, so on the phone is Russ. So Russ, how did PA Brew Review come about? How did this all start?
Yeah, so it was, and the more I tell the story, the more vague I get with the time frame. But it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago that it first started popping up. I was a craft beer drinker, craft beer enthusiast, same as anybody else, nothing in particular. And I traveled a lot around the state for work, and I would do work for 2 or 3 hours, essentially, just little bits of work, and then be done for the day. Or at least for that particular job. And I'd be looking for somewhere to go get a bite to eat. I might be 2 or 3 hours from home. I'm not going to go home right away. I'm not planning on going back to the office. I'm probably going to sit down, eat lunch, and do a little bit more work. And it was just the pull of going to a new brewery in an area that you don't know. It's always a nice experience. And it was just like pulling teeth to try to find which places were around. If it's a Tuesday at 12:30 in the afternoon, where is there a place that's open? Because breweries don't tend to have really robust hours during the day and the week.
Yeah.
Also serves food and has Wi-Fi. And if it's a beautiful day, I'd love to sit outside. It was just sort of one of those things that just by experience as a consumer, it was frustrating that information was not available. I mean, in 2014, even you had Yelp, you had Google, you had all these places. You obviously had a booming brewery industry in Pennsylvania, which I think even by then was either at or near $1 billion with a B industry, and obviously has only grown since then. But it was just weird that you had to go to Google and find the phone number for the place, and then either go to their website and hope that they listed some of these details, or more likely you had to call them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're on the phone with like 5 different breweries trying to figure it out. The whole thing felt weird and clunky in the internet age. So the first step was I made a spreadsheet of which places had food and things like that, especially areas that I would go to pretty regularly. And it ultimately turned into a Google map. I don't really know anything about web design or web development or things like that. My partner Matt does an incredible job with the website, and he's the one who built it all out.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's so nice.
I think about it, right, and he makes it happen. But so back then, before we were officially coming up with the idea, I just put it into a Google map, and it got to the point where I was sharing it often enough in Facebook groups and among my friends that wanted to know. Just there was also a problem where there weren't a lot of places that were consolidating the new breweries that were opening.
Mm-hmm.
Since 2014 was just about the first year that things started really exploding, and you started getting 50 new breweries that were opening up a year, and that's been the trend pretty much every year since then, if not more. And so there was just no way to even know where the new breweries were, let alone what they offered. So it sort of started getting shared around the Google Map link and everything like that. And so we eventually started thinking like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make it. I shouldn't say we because Matt wasn't involved yet. I just went to one of the build your own websites and made it into a site and sort of did kind of like a I don't know what to call it, but maybe like a restaurant critic or something like that, where I would leave sort of my 2 or 3 sentences of feedback on the place. Oh, it was big, it was small, it had a great ambiance, or it was just a little hole in the wall or whatever. And then I would rate it on 0 to 5 scale in a couple of different categories about the premises, sort of just an overall catch-all of was it a big place, a small place, was it cool, was it
Hmm.
rustic, the service, the beer quality, the beer variety, and then the food if they had any. And so I think on that sort of make your own, I probably went to about 50 or 60 in that phase and put them on and put the review on and shared with other people and got some input from other people as well. And it got to the point where there was sort of a little bit of confusion on my part where I thought, why does anybody care what I think about this stuff? Is if it's this is like the big untapped debate that I have with other craft beer nerds is, are you using Untapped just to keep track of your own thoughts on beers, or are you, using it so you can tell your thoughts to other people?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what with the fork that the website hit in the road was just sort of like, hey, wait a minute, every brewery experience is different, but also everybody wants a different brewery experience than what I do, right? I might like smaller places and other people might like larger places. I might not care if they don't have a really diverse food menu, but other people might care more about that. So it's kind of like if I'm putting these sort of ratings out there, and ratings already is like a cringe-worthy thing. You have to step really carefully.
Yeah.
Um,
That's where we're stuck right now.
Oh, trust me, we'll get there. We'll talk about ratings and all that. I think it's really fascinating. I think it's really interesting. But yeah, the first time you're thinking about it, you're like, man, ratings, that's it's tough. And so then it was just me, and it was just kind of like, man, do I what credentials do I have, or what even like stance do I have? How can I be the one going out there to these businesses and saying I enjoyed it pretty well, or I enjoyed it not as much, or things like that. It just didn't feel right doing it, and it certainly didn't feel like it carried a lot of weight, even if it was an okay thing to do.
Hmm.
Because how can I get anyone else to go to that website and say, hey, you don't even know me, but trust my opinion on it? People do that. It didn't sit true with me. And so eventually I kind of realized it had to be crowdsourced or it had to be nothing at all. It had to just be information, or if it were going to be ratings, it had to be crowdsourced.
Yeah.
Um, so the problem with getting it crowdsourced is, you really have to ramp everything up and get everything going to get the traffic coming through. And at the time, I had, if my time frame is correct, I had just had my wife and I had just had our second kid. I have a full-time job, as I mentioned before, that I had to travel for. So it was something that really was a passion project. It was very interesting to me. I spent a lot of time on it, but it wasn't the most primary thing at that exact moment in my life. Particularly because at the end of the day, I couldn't make it look good. I couldn't make it into any sort of real worthwhile web presence on my own without paying someone else to do it. And by the time you get to who you can trust and how much money you want to spend on them doing it, it just sort of simmered for a little while. But it was sort of a funny story. Um, Matt, who I wound up connecting with, he's a friend of a friend, and I knew him a little off and on, and he's not as big, or at least wasn't as big into the craft brewing scene at the time. But we were having brunch after a mutual friend's wedding, and he was talking about the concept of gamification and things like that, and I said, oh, that's really interesting. It's like Untapped, and he said, what's Untapped? And I said, "Oh, you're not like, yeah. I just assume everyone else in the world is a huge beer nerd. I don't know.
Yeah.
It,
Same
it
here.
like it feels like a trap that you fall into, where like you go down the rabbit hole and you just assume that everyone around you understands what you're talking about
I
with
feel that
stuff.
I
But
feel that way with pro wrestling. I feel like now that I watch it, everyone else is into it because it's like they relive their childhood.
right, right. You
But
just yeah, you just get that sense that everybody understands what you're talking about and
yeah.
appreciates what you're talking about. So he was like, I don't know that app, and so I explained it to him with the badges and things like that. And so for anybody who may not know, gamification is actually a scientific term, although it sounds like a made up word, for the idea of rewarding an intangible and relatively meaningless purpose or process essentially like video games where you beat a level and you get a bunch of badges or something like that, right? There's no, you don't have any physical gain or monetary gain, like nothing changes, but it keeps you involved. It incentivizes you to keep going. I want to get the next badge. I only need, 2 more levels to get the next badge. And Untapped does the same exact thing. And so it was not, he wasn't talking about Untapped. He wasn't even talking about beer. And I just sort of said, hey, that's really interesting. I enjoy that concept. I've learned about it a little and seen it play out with Untapped. And, he was like, wow, I never even heard of that. And I said, yeah, I actually have this website that I was hoping to sort of involve crowdsourced data in. And obviously that's one way to get crowdsourced data is offer a reward like that, a badge or something like that that people can work towards and incentivize them.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, wow, that's really interesting. I said, okay, great. I gave him the website address. I knew that he did web development for a living, but again, at that point, things had kind of just simmered down and it was what it was, and it was just going to continue being at whatever level the website had been. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, literally, which is just so ironic, or at least coincidental, that some of my Google search filters that I have set up to keep track of the news on the craft brewing world had caught a PLCB grant program that they were instituting for brewing related industries. And they were giving away grants. And it wasn't for breweries, it was for brewing related industries like tourism or advertising or some agriculture things and whatnot. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh man, a lot of this is about promoting and enhancing and developing the brewing industry in Pennsylvania. I said, what we can do with the user feedback and the data points could really be helpful for the industry as a whole and individual breweries. And it just seemed like it really fit pretty well. So I emailed Matt and said, hey, I know we just kind of talked about this and you weren't really aware of any of this going on, but I know you do web development and you seem to enjoy the idea of the gamification and that kind of thing. And do you want, there's grants. Do you want to try to get this grant? They give it to a lot of different people, but yeah, we spent the next 2 months writing a grant and presenting it to the PLCB board, Department of Agriculture, and they wound up giving us a grant for our startup costs. No money in the pocket or anything, but just reimbursement for the startup costs for getting the website up and running. And he was like, yeah, I'm all in on it. So since then, he's been plugging away at it. I've been plugging away at it. And, with the exception, obviously, of some changes or some tweaks, that's what produced the website that you see today. And just sort of that same general driving idea that we want it to be a resource for consumers to be able to find all the breweries, but also understand what they're getting when they go to the breweries, the experience, that sort of thing. That was the genesis of the whole thing. We get a lot of people that say, oh, well, what's different than Untapped? Is this just Untapped? And it's like, no, like Untapped, some people love it, some people hate it, but whether you love it or hate it, what it's for is beer, specific beers. And we don't even have an option for people to rate a specific beer on our whole website. The idea being that when that boom came along in 2014, the before that, I don't know how familiar you may be or your listeners, before that there had been laws restricting the sale of alcohol at tap rooms, right? So you had your brew pubs that served food and they could serve their beer, Iron Hill and Sly Fox and those kind of places. But a lot of the tap rooms, the specific just brewery only places, they couldn't. Like if anyone remembers going to like Weyerbacher way back when, and that you could get a taster, you couldn't pay for it, they couldn't charge you for it because they couldn't sell the alcohol. You couldn't order a pint, you couldn't drink anything while you were there that you had paid for. And in 2014, so I guess my point is that it led to a lot of the breweries being pretty much the same experience pre 2014, or that the law started changing a little before then, and 2014 in general is the time of it. But
just
that's when
PA beer laws have changed so much. Like, I mean, I think they're really starting to see, like, wow, Pennsylvania is becoming a craft brewery mecca, and we need to change or loosen up some of our laws so we can have more revenue in this industry that's helping our state.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's going to be very interesting now to shift gears. I mean, we're recording this in still the tail end, hopefully the tail end of the shutdown and the COVID-19
Hmm.
issues. Um, but I mean, there have been places doing stuff that they're not really supposed to be doing. I know the PLCB has they've officially relaxed a lot of their regulations, but even unofficially, there are a lot of breweries doing things that they're not exactly entitled to do under the laws as they exist, even the relaxed ones. And I'm obviously not naming any names, but
Yeah.
I think that there's a growing movement to try to get something positive out of all this where it can be an example to the PLCB and say, listen, look, this all happened. The world didn't end. We started delivering our beer. We did local delivery. We started doing, canning, or we started doing, growlers for, or crowlers or things like that, um, to people where we could drop them off on their doorsteps. Like, the world didn't end. It was fine. And hopefully that will drive some change in that continued direction.
I
But
think
you're right.
I think mailing beer. I mean, obviously, some distributors are going to take a hit, but it's at the point too where like where we live in Pennsylvania. And I'm not sure what episode you listen to, or I don't want to keep repeating myself, but where we are in Pennsylvania is we really don't have much around us. Like we have Yingling, which is not really a tap room where you can go and sit and enjoy a meal and stuff. It's kind of like just
Right.
small tasters. We have two in Tamaqua, and that's pretty much it. So we really, really have to rely on if you're that much of a craft beer drinker that you're going to travel 45 minutes to an hour to Harrisburg or to a Reading or anything like that to get beer. So we rely on our distributors in our area. But they're all under different contracts where they say, well, we can only provide you this certain beers, and then you're like, well, I want to try new stuff because that's what craft beer is all about. You want to expand your horizons. So then you either have to travel, you have to trade, which is technically probably not legal, or you know what I mean, but if they open the door where like, hey, we can send you stuff in the mail. Like that would be amazing for people like us in our area that really are kind of closed off to that beer scene.
Well, so you're absolutely right. The interesting thing is that it actually has been legal for Pennsylvania breweries to ship beer within the state of Pennsylvania directly to your door.
Hmm.
I think since 2016, if I'm correct. That might have even been in the 2014 changes, but I think it was 2016. Tired Hands has been doing it since not long after that.
Yeah,
Levante
we just got a
Brewing.
shipment in for this Friday. Well, this upcoming Friday, we're going to be doing a Tired Hand episode, and most of that beer was all shipped to us.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Yeah, and they've been backlogged, so you definitely have to order it ahead of time these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, Levante came into it not too long after. Beaver Brewing in the western part of the state and Strange Roots had been doing it, and I think most recently Mellow Mink had been doing it before the shutdown. And I had said before anybody knew that any of this mess was going to happen on the shutdown, we had sort of said the idea of distributors, and if you know the laws, they're like you said, they're so convoluted and they're so archaic, and they bind you in with a certain distributor, and that's a contract for life, and you can't break that contract without an incredible amount of hassle and legal wrangling and a lot of money that you have to wind up paying to break that contract if you can even actually break it. And it just sort of seemed like the time had come for shipping beer, and we were sort of expecting that to be sort of the trend of 2020, or at least shortly after, and that's all absolutely accelerated. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that's going to really take off.
yeah, we'd love to pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, we were right, we nailed that trend. But obviously, there's such an intervening factor that who knows if these breweries would have or wouldn't have. But since the shutdown, it has really forced the hands of a lot of breweries to finally sit down and make the time to think out the logistics and how it would work and how monetarily, financially does it make sense for them. And since then, we've seen particularly down where we're centered, down by the Philadelphia area. We've seen, off the top of my head, I don't remember how many it is, but Free Will started it, Vault Brewing started it, Love City Brewing started it, Larimer Brewing Company started it, Conshohocken Brewing just started it. That's all in the last 2 months since the shutdown. And so it's crazy, it's great. But yeah, hopefully that will be a trend that continues. Hopefully those breweries that are doing it now will continue to do it. Hopefully it's not just like a stopgap that they were using while their tap rooms were shut down. But yeah, that's the big question in 2020 and the next few years is what will that do to beer distributors? Beer distributors were already in a tough spot because of the rise of both bottle shops as well as beer in Wegmans and Giant and grocery stores and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's just tough. I mean, there's a lot of great distributors. I've got nothing against distributors, but there's still a lot of distributors that just don't understand the beer market. They don't understand craft beer. They don't understand that a beer that's designed to taste that particular way needs to be cared for a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
The old 90 degrees in the warehouse in the summer thing, and you look and you're like, here's a hazy IPA, and it's 120 days old and 90
Yeah.
degrees sitting on the shelf at 90 degrees. It's tough because
We're very fortunate in our area. Our distributors are fantastic. So because we can't really, like, when we first started the show, we couldn't get breweries because we were brand new. I mean, we're still brand new. We're not even hit our 2-year mark. So a lot of our earlier episodes were bars in our area that we would sit and talk to the bar manager and be like, I'm into really craft beer, and like I really take care of it, and I make sure I do this, and like trying their selection, and then talking to distributors and having them on their episodes and doing like a mix of 6 from their place. So we've been like, for how small we are and how fresh our area is becoming with the craft beer scene, because we're a very blue collar domestic beer fan area. Like, most of the people aren't gonna walk into a bar and pay $4 or $5 for a draft beer and they're not even gonna give it a shot because they know they can get that $1.75 draft and they can drink that all night. But it is starting to turn around. A lot more bars are saying, you want your domestics, we're only giving you domestics in bottle. Like, we have a few different bars that they don't even put domestics on tap anymore. They're like, nope, our taps are dedicated to craft beer. And then people come in and are like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? So it's we're getting really fortunate with that in Schuylkill County. That craft beer is getting that popular. Like, we're very, for what we lack in breweries, we are very fortunate with bars supporting it and distributors, and people actually know. It's like having an education on it and having to do it properly. Like, all we really had, and it's not really a bash, but was Wise Markets. But how you were saying, Wise Markets beer selection for a long time was like, it was all not refrigerated, right in the shelf, right in direct sunlight, and then you go, and they wouldn't really check their bottles of their dates. They kind of just sat there, and you go buy a beer and you bring it home and you crack it open and it's completely skunked or disgusting, and so a lot of people are like, no, we're not going to do that. And then more distributors like, well, if they're not going to do it properly, we're going to start doing it. So it really picked up in other areas.
Right. And so the shutdown, I think, has sort of reminded everyone a lot about making sure you show support to your local brewery,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people are trying to go out of their way to make sure that, hey, listen, I'll order some gift cards, or I'll order a couple extra crowlers or cans and chuck them in the back of the fridge, and then I wouldn't need them for a couple extra weeks maybe, but I want to support you. But the same is absolutely true of good beer bars, of good distributors. Your point is exactly right. Obviously, I was generalizing when I'm speaking about the ones that don't take care. There's
Absolutely.
really great ones and some really poor ones and everything in between. But yeah, I think you have to, these days, especially with the shutdown, harp on it. But even after it, to recognize which places you can trust to appreciate and curate their selection and handle it well, and clean their tap lines, or to refrigerate the beer that needs to be refrigerated at the distributor or the bottle shop. Those places, you need to make sure to support them, because there's a lot of people who still don't know the difference and would, like you said, would just rather go get a cheaper beer and don't notice the difference, or aren't paying enough attention, whatever. And the places that put a premium on it, they're spending extra time and money on educating their staff and spending the time to be careful about what beers they have, and that they don't run into beer list that's all 100% stouts or 100, but they always have a good mix of it. Those places are the ones that you need to make sure to speak with your money and support. It's easy sometimes to sort of, now that we're talking about direct shipping, right? It would be easy to just grab your beer directly from the brewery, and in general we support that. But you also have to show some love to the places that get that beer from the brewery and do it right.
Yeah.
And do right by the customer and the brewery, because those places are going to be squeezed in the middle as the direct to shipping sort of comes more to fruition.
Yeah. Our two goals for the podcast we want to do is, we want to start like maybe once a month, go get like an Edge USA bus, or rent one of those buses, get a DD to drive the bus for the day, and then take like a bus trip to Philly, or take a bus trip to the Sunbury area and the Shamokin area, because there's a bunch of breweries there, or take a road trip just to Harrisburg and fill the bus with people, and then we take some brew chores and we just go to different breweries and try beer. Or another thing we want to do is like we said, we do have amazing bars in our area, so we want to maybe help facilitate or get the breweries in contact with our local bars and do tap takeovers. So like we definitely want to try to bring it more to our. I mean, if you look at your map, we're located in Frackville, Pennsylvania. So that Pottsville has one brewery and one blue tag and one red tag.
Right.
So our area is just dead. It's a huge dead zone. We really have nothing. But our beer scene is pretty popular there. And by the way, you have another brewery coming in Pottsville soon. The Pillaroo Brewing Company is going to be opening in Pottsville within the next year or two.
Yeah, so I know the guys from Pilgrim. They've when I last talked with them, I think it was Harrisburg Beer Week last year, or may have been. I'm not sure, but I spoke with them not too long ago, and they had a spot picked out, but they were still working out some details for renovations and stuff. So we always try to make sure. So I mean, that's one of the things about our map is we try very hard not to be one of those websites that sort of twists the brewery's arms or puts them in a bad spot.
Yeah,
so,
no, 100%.
We reach out to them, and if they say, like the guys from Pilgrim, which again, this was a year ago, I'll probably have to reach back out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, we're still working out some final details. We're not 100% sure yet, this or that, because a lot of places will false start. It's not criticism of them. It's just
very true.
The whole industry. Not only getting the details finalized about a lease, and it turned out our wastewater plan wasn't going to pass through zoning for the township. Stuff like that happens, and it's awful because it'll be months and months into the whole thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of places it just takes a really long time, and they say, you know what, we don't want people to get super hyped, and then 18 months later we finally open and the hype has all died down. So can you leave us off your map until we get closer? We'll let you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So. I'll have to reach out to them though. That's great. The stuff that they do with the
Brewfest.
With the Schuylkill Fest, and they've been. I guess I'm probably going to butcher it, but they've been doing the best beer belt that they've been bringing around.
Oh yeah.
Understand that.
The championship belt. Yeah, I love it. It's my favorite. They're such good dudes.
Yeah, they are, and it's so cool because everybody will tell you the craft beer industry, and from your experience, it's very collegial. Everybody's friendly. Everything's nice, and people get along. But like they bring a certain amount of exuberance that's just above and beyond. Like everybody's pretty happy. The brewers are happy. They get along together. They have a good time. It's fun, and then those guys show up, and it's just like a whole other level of just. It's just like the joy that they bring about everything, but especially the beer and everything. It's so cool. It's stuff like that really, I think, rounds out Pennsylvania's whole brewing industry as just so great as a consumer, as somebody to be involved in, as brewers. You see it. You've talked to plenty of breweries and things like that. They're all cool people. Some of them are quieter. Some of them are more analytical. Others are more wild and want to see how many different things they can chuck in to their boil and have everything come out. So it's really cool. And all that. To your point, we got a little sidetracked on that. But to your point about the bus and going on, absolutely. I think it's a tremendous idea. And that's what's so cool about it, and that's part of what we wanted to do, was to show people. Most people know what's in their immediate area. I think plenty of people are still a little surprised because there are so many, and they're like, I didn't even know about that one, maybe tucked behind a strip mall or something like that. But for the most part, people know what's in their area. And what we try to do is to sort of say, hey, listen, you don't have to go to Portland, either Portland in Maine or Oregon. You don't have to go to Asheville, North Carolina. You don't have to go to San Diego and all the other great beer cities. You could stay in Pennsylvania if you want to do the old beercation or even a regular vacation that still has a fair amount of brewery hopping in it. Right here in Pennsylvania, in any number of regions, and be able to go over the course of a long weekend to a dozen or more breweries that are all top-notch, not too far from each other, and super great experiences. So that's what drove a lot of it, was just the experience. Just where can I get a fun experience that's different than what's very, very local to me, but still supporting in PA and still doing that kind of thing. And then, obviously, at the end of the day, when we talk about ratings and things like that, you still want to make sure that you go into a place with decent beer. Now,
Hmm.
on a podcast, I will tell you that every brewery in Pennsylvania makes great beer. It's just, you know, the truth of it is a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Some of them make greater beer than others, that kind of thing. And so that's where when we think about a rating system and things like that, we want to give valuable information to the consumer because people value things differently. Some people care less about the food and more about the atmosphere, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But we want to be gentle with it because we're not about trying to trash a brewery or trying to, undercut anybody that's doing good, honest, hard work and putting out, decent enough beer, but people just don't respond as positively on a rating system. We try
Yeah.
to take that into consideration and be careful about that.
That's what we're trying to do as well. So on our show, like me personally, I'm not a stout guy. So when I review a stout, I try the best to tell you what I'm tasting, and if this might be what you're into, but it's just not for me. And then we have some people on our show who are just really into one style of IPA. So we have a vast style of different brew, and then we might have somebody on the show who's never had a craft beer before, so they might hate every single thing we put in their glass. But we always try to say, like, well, what about it do you like? Like, because our opinions aren't saying that your beer is horrible, because if we pull up your beer and you average a 4, but for us it may be like a 3.5, which is not, I don't think it's a terrible score, but we're just trying to be as honest as possible. But it's all, we always say this is our views and it's not reflecting of what your opinion is going to be. We still want you to go try it.
Yeah,
But
and it's all.
I'm sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No,
So,
I was gonna say
yeah.
it's all it's sorry, we're talking over each other. It's all part of a spectrum, and there's two categories, right? I mean, there's beer that you don't like or don't like as much,
Hmm.
and then there's like poorly made beer,
Yeah.
right? And people think that they're on the same sort of spectrum and that they overlap maybe, and they're just different. They're just different. If it's a poorly made beer, then it's a problem with the beer. If it's something you don't like as much, then it just means that where it is on your spectrum might be different than where it is on somebody else's spectrum. It really doesn't have much indication at all as to the quality of the beer itself. I mean, for example, for me, I've had people that I know and love and trust and who are just fanatical about craft beer tell me some of like the world class Rauk beers, smoked beers, and this is the most amazing one that's ever been made, and it's like universally believed to be the best example of the style, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And I still am going to hate it. I just can't get into those beers,
Yeah.
to go on and sort of that untapped mindset to go on then and be like, well, I hated this beer at 1 out of 5 or something like that. It's if you want to use early on, I used Untapped mostly just for personal reference. When I
Hmm.
was drinking enough beer that I was like, hey, I just want to know if I've had this one before and if I liked it. So if it was a 1 out of 5 to me, it was important that I put it a 1 out of 5 because I was only thinking in terms of my mindset. And then as you become involved in the industry, you sort of start realizing that's a dangerous or at least not a beneficial way to do it for the breweries because it's making other people think that it's a bad beer or a poorly made beer. And that's sort of when I started shifting to the idea of if I don't like a beer, but I can tell it's a well-made beer, I just didn't rate it. And then obviously now with the website and everything being official, we don't rate beers on Untapped anymore. We check in some from time to time, and we'll usually put like a snippet about the brewery itself.
Yeah.
But that was the whole point. That was the genesis of all of this was our opinion doesn't matter. That's the approach that we try to take, is that the only thing we want to offer to people is information, not
Hmm.
editorializing or opinions or things like that. Just because that's not the role that we're trying to fill.
Yeah.
I think it's great. There's plenty of places, whether it be a podcast or whether it be anywhere else, that offer opinions on those things, and those are fine resources so long as people understand them for what they are.
Yeah.
But I think too many places and too many people just they think of overlap between the two.
Yeah.
And we decided, you know what, we're focused on the informational and details side of things, so let's not have any confusion. Let's just keep it completely,
That's
cut and
very
dry.
commendable. Yeah, we're definitely our angle is more or less we're an everyday person giving a review on something, but we're not by any means of necessary the stretch of the imagination professional beer drinkers. Like, we're just beer schlubs, man. We enjoy beer, and we just try to give you our take on what it is, but we also try to educate ourselves more as the show goes on. So if we have a chance to go talk to a brewery, they can educate us on what makes a lager, what makes a sour, how can that be a process. So then our reviews can then become better, or we could become smarter beer drinkers to then educate more people and send them to more places like PA Brew Review and say, hey, here's another resource you guys can use to find more beer in your area. So we try to play that little middle road, but it is definitely challenging to be a review, but then also be like, I don't want to offend people, it's definitely tough. But
it's
on your map
sorry.
here, that's all right. On your map here, if you look at it, if people go to pabrewreview.com, you have over 5. This is just open, like green, ready to like established ones. 582 in Pennsylvania. When you click on it, like he said, it's just a Google map, and it pinpoints you right to where your location is. Just me personally, I didn't know a handful of these that are not too bad driving distance for myself. Like, I've heard of breweries, but didn't know exactly where they were located. This tool, I'm going to be honest, man, this tool and just this website is going to help our podcast tremendously, because we want to start doing more showcases on instead of just doing like mix of sixes and having a beer from here and then maybe sneak one in from New York and then sneak one in from Ohio. Like, we could be like, hey, this week we need to make a trip over to, I'm just click one for example, Covered Bridge, because they're not too far from us. We never had them on the show. So let's drive over. Let's see what we can get. If they growler, if they bottle, anything, get a couple beers and bring them back and do them on the show. And then we can showcase what we think of this place. And because that's another thing too, is like I haven't really traveled to breweries. So then we can go in and see what it looks like and then turn around and say, well, hey, if you go on PA Brew Review, they do a full review on this brewery and people's take on it. Like, this your website is definitely going to be, because we're very our podcast is very oriented around Untapped as well. So we do use the Untapped systems. We do read people's check-ins. We say what people have checked this in at. So if we give it a 3 and somebody else gives it a 4 or a 5, we're saying, well, listen, man, 100 people gave this 5s and we're giving it this, so our take isn't always necessarily true. This is just our opinion. Maybe we're picking up something that somebody else isn't, so we definitely try to bring that up. But I think your website is definitely going to help us as a podcast, and your hard, like, I mean, we appreciate your work there, man. This is really your site is fantastic. It truly is.
Well, thank you. Obviously, I truly appreciate that. We work hard on it. We try to make it the best resource we can. To your point, though, you mentioned earlier, and you're just sort of mentioning it again. This whole idea of just being relatively average or not professional craft beer drinkers reviewing beer, like, that's what's important, though. I mean, everybody loves to be the qualified person that says, this has notes of celery and grated cardboard, and therefore it means that it was 14 days too long in the sun. There's value to having that knowledge. I'm a certified cicerone. I have that knowledge, but trying to speak to other people, like a large audience like that, it's just, there's no reason for it. It doesn't reflect how people are perceiving the beer. And so I think the way you guys are doing it, you learn, you begin to develop a more acute palate and things like that. But for the most part, as you said, as long as you're being honest with why you didn't like it, there's no reason that you need to go in and say, well, the phenols are a little bit too high, or just a little bit.
We don't even know. You're speaking it's a different language when you say that stuff to me. I have no idea what that even means.
But that's exactly my point. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything unless you're the brewer getting that feedback.
Yeah.
The brewer knows what that means and can adjust accordingly. But the average person drinking the beer is like, what are you trying to say? Is it too sweet, or is it sour, or is it smoky? Like, use those words.
Yeah.
And so I think it's perfect. I think it's great that you guys do it that way. I think that's a much better resource when it comes to telling people about beers than somebody who just kind of wants to hear themselves speak about something at a high level.
Yeah.
There's times and places for that, but for the most part, telling other people about beer is not one of those times or places. But,
yeah. I appreciate that. That definitely makes me feel better because I feel like we're just like idiots that are like we're not taking these idiots
No.
seriously. But I mean, what you're saying there is exactly what we're going for, and it does feel good to like hear it. Like that is a good way for people. Like I said, we're in an area where we don't have educated beer drinkers, so we're trying our ripple in the pond is starting here, and we're trying to grow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And listen, even in other areas of the state that have had more explosive growth of craft breweries and things like that, the explosive growth didn't happen because everyone suddenly became a certified beer judge, or went through whatever program or even necessarily read a book about the nuances of beer and things like that. It happened because people were making beer that tasted really good,
Yep.
and people wanted something that tasted juicy, or something that tasted really tart, or something that tasted sweet, like a lot of things now. And people responded to that in their individual taste of the beer, and then they passed it along to their friends. And they didn't, same thing I said before, they didn't pass it along to their friends by explaining, oh well, during the brewing process they actually do a secondary fermentation because that's what makes it. No, they just said, hey, this is crazy. It's a graham cracker marshmallow chocolate stout. It tastes like s'mores. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what spread it. So it's, for people who want to educate themselves and go however high up the ladder they want, that's great, and it will do them justice, and they can, again, find the time and place to use that knowledge. But it's not general knowledge. It's not something to talk to the mass of beer drinkers about. It's just something else. But
yeah. Every stout I drink, no matter what, it can be, it's chocolate covered cherries with marshmallow and vanilla, and I drink it and it tastes like old coffee. For some reason, every stout to me, and I hate the taste of coffee, they all taste like, I never get a chocolate profile. I only get, it just tastes like coffee. Tastes like cold coffee.
Very interesting.
I think my palate is getting a little better. Like I just had a couple stouts where I was like, I still get a coffee taste, but I am getting other notes with it as well. Like for the longest time, I hated sours, and now I love them. I mean, my acid reflux the next day doesn't love them, but I like them as beers. But so you said you're from the Philly area, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Now, when I say this is not, judging favorite, but like for someone, because I want to make that clear, because I know some people will be like, oh, we're big fans of Brew Review, and they didn't say us, and that's not what we're trying to do here. So if people from our area are traveling out to the the Philadelphia area, and for someone who, you've explored a lot of these breweries, you've went in and experienced them, what are some ones that are like top tier level ones like you need to go see, and then what are some ones that you think are on a good come up that people should go check out too, that maybe kind of fly under the radar?
Yeah, so I think you alluded to this a little bit. I'm absolutely not going to give you a straightforward answer on this, just because of the nature of everything. I can say this confidently, is that in Philadelphia, any brewery that you go to, you're going to do fine. You're not going to be disappointed, and that's not just a diplomacy. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The idea behind the website, again, same thing, is that you're going to get something different from the different places, right? And so we'll have pictures and ratings and things like that. And a lot of it has to be geared towards what you're trying to get, right? Are you trying to go to a really cool space? Are you trying to go somewhere and get a full meal? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. That when people say what's the best brewery in a certain area, one place or the other, I think it's obviously it's a little oversimplistic just in general, but I think it's overly simplistic because you're forgetting the environment, you're forgetting the experience, right? Because most people would answer that question by just telling you the best beer that they think of in a certain area of Philadelphia or things like that.
Yeah.
So with all that prefaced, a couple of places that definitely I think are worth seeking out, and for particular reasons. One is just, honestly, it's just, I'm a homer. It's very close to my heart. Crime and Punishment Brewing Company, which is near the zoo in Philadelphia. They're right at 27th and Girard.
I've never heard of them, but that's a great name.
Very local. They're a very local place. Yeah, a lot of like Russian history and literature on the walls and books on the shelf and things like that. And honestly, it was just coincidence. My wife and I at the time lived 2 blocks from where they were when they were in the process of opening up, and we helped support them and open the brewery and everything. So to me, I'd probably love them forever just for that connection.
They're kind of just look at the map too. They're kind of by themselves out there too.
Yeah, well, yes, and in sort of an area. It's a transitional area. I don't want to, especially now is a tough time with politics and
Mm-hmm.
things like gentrification. But they were one of the businesses that sort of helped revitalize Girard Avenue there. And there's a whole other discussion that can be had about it, and a lot of people that are more intelligent and informed about it than me. But the reason you haven't heard of them is because they didn't come in there with like a gentrification mindset. They didn't come in there and think, "Hey, listen, here's a nice cheap place because this neighborhood is going to be, more upscale in a couple of years, so let's get it now while it's cheap and be in place."
Mm-hmm.
They have been that neighborhood's brewery. I mean, it's they went in, they didn't yeah, they just wanted to fit in. They didn't come in with their own attitude and say, "Hey, like us or leave us," whatever. They did such a great job of supporting the community, coming in, making sure that they were, aware of what was going on around them and supporting what they had sort of bought into. So that's great. Like I said, it's an easy brewery to support for all those reasons, and I probably would have loved them forever, even if their beer sucked. The good thing is their beer doesn't suck. Their beer is really great. And they do a lot of great things. They've obviously, just like everyone, converted into two or three hazy IPAs at any given time, which was not their original thing, but the market dictates, and they do that very well. But they do a lot of other really cool stuff. They do, like raspberry Berliner Weisses, and they did a beet beer. They did it's discontinued now, which makes me sad, but they did a beer called a Grodzitski, which I had never ever heard of, which is a Polish smoked wheat beer.
Yeah.
And back to my discussion about the Rauch beers, that Grodzitski is the only smoked beer that I've ever liked. It's essentially, if you know a sour like a Berliner Weiss,
Yeah.
like a really light tart beer, but with a level of sort of smokiness into it.
Yeah. I
If you
I grew up
told
in
me, I would have said I hated it.
Yeah, I
But
grew
I
up
tried it and I loved it.
in a fire like I should have been a third generation firefighter, but I just didn't take that path. But, so I grew up around a fire department and firefighters, and I always said it's like smoking it's like drinking a structure fire, like
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
there's a fire in your mouth.
I always think of it as it just, to me, it's like smoked meat. It just doesn't do it. But
Yeah,
with that one in particular, I love sours as well, and maybe it was the tartness of it, whatever it was balanced so great. They don't make it anymore, so I don't know why I'm waxing on about it. Hey
yeah.
everyone, sorry, don't come to Philadelphia for that beer. I've been lobbying them to bring it back, but again, just they have to go with what the market dictates,
The
and
pictures
not
that
everyone.
are uploaded on the site for it. So if I click on the brewery and I see like the opening window and stuff, is that all uploaded by you guys, or is that from the community of people?
That's all uploaded by either us or the brewery themselves.
Okay.
So we we get in the weeds a little bit here. I'll talk about it all night. Just cut me off when it gets boring. But we when we were putting it all together, we were trying to solve a couple of problems. So it was maybe a little bit too quick for me earlier to act like there were no websites that could have given me the information I needed way back in 2014.
Hmm.
There were some websites that at least purported to be doing that, and what we're trying to do now. There were a couple of like very similar problems with the handful of websites that tried to do it. Um, in particular, they all had one of two approaches. Either they didn't charge the user or the seemingly the breweries, and were therefore basically just a passion project, which I can totally appreciate,
Hmm.
but had all pretty clearly burned out, and in a state where there's literally a new brewery opening every single week for the last 5 years, it goes stale very quick. If you start checking in on your website every 3 months or every 6 months to try to update it, and you're not really looking too closely even as you do update it, those websites were almost worthless, when it came to a state that at the time, had 200 plus breweries in it, and this website had 100, and it was growing by one or two a year instead of the 50 plus a year that was actually happening. The other type of website that tried to do it was trying to do on essentially a pay for play model, where they would list all the breweries, and you as a consumer would click on it, and it would say this brewery has not yet chosen to list their information. If you're from this brewery, call to claim your listing for the low price of whatever. And that was a crappy model for everyone, because the breweries didn't have the time or the incentive or frankly, the willingness to pay the money to a site that was being lazy and sort of twisting arms like that. And as a consumer, I don't get any information now, right? You tried to hang this over their head at the brewery, and the brewery said, "No, this is dumb. We're not paying you." But now I'm, as a consumer, left with no information. So that was sort of the backdrop that we tried to put everything into. And so the way that we did it was, um, we wanted to commit to the breweries that everything would always be updated and that everything would be accurate. And one of the ways to do that, whether it be pictures or detailed information,
Yeah.
is crowdsourcing it.
Hmm.
And we were just very nervous and very wary about that. I think the breweries were very wary about that as well. A number of them reached out to us to voice their concerns that we might do it that way. And they basically said, like, hey, listen, things change. We'd like to sort of be the ones in control of this information, or if you're going to change that information, we'd like you to at least be in general contact with us about it. So yeah, so we don't have anything currently that's user generated except for the rating
Yeah.
itself, and so the pictures and things like that. We might. It's tough just because you want to walk the line where you want people to feel engaged. You want them to be able to upload their pictures, and the brewery is going to enjoy having more pictures of people having a good time there. But you have to be careful. There has to be some screening or some
Yeah.
moderation at
It
some
just can get
point,
out of control.
because
Yeah.
some idiot, will put his phone down his pants or something and submit a picture.
Beers happening.
And right, yeah, right. Because we're in an industry where people are already inebriated when they're using our website. So anything could happen. It's just a lot of craziness. So we've tried to be real careful about how we balance that
Yeah.
and what comes out of it. But yeah, at this time we have a button on there that you can submit if you think some of the information is wrong,
Yeah.
and we'll double check it, but nothing that directly comes from the customer except for the rating, and that's its own whole discussion because
I'll tell you what, one of the things I'm a huge fan of already, just kind of looking at. So I'm in the Philly area, just kind of perusing around, like breweries I've never even heard of, and just seeing like obviously a cool name's going to catch me. So I'm looking at like Human Robot. So just an example, if you're on the website, you click on the brewery and you click more info, and then the very top yellow bar says current hours available. Check social media. You click it, it sends you right to their social media link, which I think is awesome as hell. And then it says gift cards and merchandise. So if that brewery is selling merchandise and you're looking at from your home or your thing, you can still support them and not even travel there, or if you're like through your guys' website. I love the fact that you're still putting it towards like, hey, go support these guys. Like the website for me, I don't really like when stuff is too convoluted and too all over the place. It's very, very user friendly and very simple. Like anyone can go on this website and peruse around and have a good time with it. Like I just don't. I think the more I'm browsing around it, I'm just more and more and more impressed by it. You're not getting smashed with a bunch of ads and pop-ups and all this other nonsense, and it runs very smooth. It takes you right where you need to go at a button click. It's just really, really nice.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. We did give a lot of conscious thought to the layout, to making sure that it wasn't just a content dump that sort of overwhelms and you got to scroll through and you're not sure what you're looking for or where. And I appreciate that. I know Matt will appreciate that on the design end. I will say the one thing that sort of throws a wrench in all of this is what you're looking at for the site
Mm-hmm.
is significant, not the layout, not the design, but the content is relatively significantly different than what it was 3 months ago before this whole mess.
Yeah.
So that when you talk about that pop down, that bit sort of banner information at the top, we added that. That is not like a typical part of the site. We added that specifically because everything went nuts when the breweries were scrambling, like, how do we sell beer? Will we sell beer? And essentially, so we list in a normal phase right now. So when you're on that information page, you'll see it lists, I think at this point it just lists the phase, what color phase it's in, whether it's red or green or yellow or something like that. Normally we have 27 pieces of information listed there for each brewery. Like, do they have Wi-Fi? Do they allow dogs? What kind of
Oh
parking
wow.
do they have? Do they serve food? What kind of food? Do they, like do they have games? Do they sell beer to go? Do they, offer cans or growlers or what? Like, we have like 27 data points that should be listed there. And almost literally overnight, they all became 100% irrelevant,
Yeah.
and everything closed. So we hid all that information so no one would start getting confused. We hid the hours. You might be confused because you're like, man, you included all this information, but you don't have their hours. We hid it because it didn't matter anymore. Every single brewery changed their hours because they were doing takeout or curbside or all that. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that normally would be populating that whole area is gone. We've just hidden it for now
Yeah.
because
Because you don't
well,
want
that's what
someone
we
to drive
want.
all the way there and be like, oh, by the way,
Yeah,
this isn't a thing. And they're like, oh, well,
100%.
PA Brewer told us the wrong
Yeah.
information. Yeah. No.
Yes. And that goes back to the point that we always want to do right by the brewery.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It would be my nightmare to have improper information lead to a confused situation for a consumer or something like that. But yeah, so normally when you're on the map, if you create, I don't know if you created a user account or not, but if you
I
create a
did.
user account,
Yep.
um, the filters there, again, it's the same thing. It's like completely neutered now. You can filter right now by whether or not a brewery has statewide delivery and whether or not they're in red or green phase. So you know which ones are open, and which ones are closed, and yellow is right in the middle.
And making an
Um,
account is so simple too. You literally click on it and you can log in. You can make an account. You don't have to put all your information in and go through the whole process. You can literally just do it through a Facebook. Like it just links
yeah,
your Facebook.
yep.
It's
Or Google or
it's so
whatever
simple.
you're,
It's
yep.
such a simple, awesome idea. The
We
is there an app coming to this like where you can do it from mobily from your phone? Like say if you're in a city, you can access it through like an app or just go through a web browser.
eventually the goal is for an app. Is just sort of everything trends that way. We don't have it now. I don't know if you're sitting on a laptop or a computer doing it right now, but
Yeah,
if
laptop.
you
Yeah.
if you use it on your phone, you open the browser and you type it in or save the icon to your home screen if you want. And as soon as you're on the site, it runs on your phone exactly like an app, right? It's all formatted. It's all built specifically to reformat exactly for mobile and all that. It's not one of those things where like you click on it on your phone's browser and you're like, oh, the text is 3 times as large as the screen and I have to
Yeah.
scroll out and no, you wouldn't know the difference whether it was an app or not once you open it in your browser on your phone. So we're working on that, but it's not something urgent for us at this point just because it does have such great functionality already. But like I was saying, so first of all, for everyone out there, the first question we get all the time is, why do I have to create an account? Do I have to pay for something? And the answer is no, you don't have to pay. But when it comes to things like ratings and data points and things like that, you need to have individualized, tokens essentially for people, on the sort of software speak of it or hardware speak of it. I need to know that you're not the same person rating the same brewery 100 times in a row
Yeah.
for good or bad purposes, right? And so if any of the information is to be trusted or to be worthwhile, it has to be input by somebody who has verified themselves as different than other people. But yeah, so the map, normally the filters, like I said, there's 2 filters on there now. We normally run all of the details through those filters. So you could literally filter the map by places that allow a dog and have beer to go in cans and serve barbecue. And you could click those 3 filters and it would show you across the whole state which places fit those 3 descriptions or
Hmm.
any combination of all the details that we have. So the same thing, like, is it a place that has a TV because I'm looking to go out to a brewery and watch the game tonight? Is it a place that has beer to go because I want to go have some beer but then also take some home with me, right? And so there's a lot of functionality that right now is sort of behind a curtain, just because we took it all down because it's not relevant
Yeah.
in this sort of upside down world that we're living in. But that's sort of the idea, is the choice is in a lot of areas of the state is pretty overwhelming, about where to go and how to go, or what you're going to get. So we wanted to make sure that although all the breweries are great and offer great experiences in their own way, people want to have a specific experience, and we wanted to have them be able to tailor,
Yeah.
specifically which breweries would get that experience for them.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm very very impressed by it, man. It's really really nice. I think you guys have a home run here, and just even the simplified version. I can't wait to see when everything opens back up and just see the real hard work really shine through here. It's absolutely fantastic. It's so nice. I'm blown away by it. How can people now? I do see on the website too. You can show support, so you can go on the link and you can do stuff that. How does that work?
Yeah, so that's just something that we threw on there. We how can I put this? I want to be careful. We didn't do this for money. We haven't made any money other than, a buck here or a buck there kind of thing. In the what coming on two and a half full years now that we've been committed to it. But just out of a sense of generally having people reach out to us and say, hey, listen, is there a paid version? I mean, it's astounding. We've had emails from people saying, hey, is there a paid version? I like what you're doing. And they also want to get extra features, but also want to support. And we just say, no, it's all laid out there. You got to create an account, but it's free. And once you create that account, you have all the functionality. And they always say, oh, well, that's a shame because I really like it and I'd like to support it. So we have it. I think it's a PayPal link or something like that in the frequently asked questions section. We don't push it on people. It's not something that we put front and center or include in our newsletter or anything like that.
Yeah, no, it's not.
But it's there.
You sneak
it
it
exists.
in there. You not sneak it, but you put it. It's there if people want. We do the same thing. We have merch and we have a small donation link. I don't put it out there. I mean, I push the merch a little bit because it's cool to have your like. I would rock a PA Brew Review T-shirt or hat or something. Just putting that out there too. I don't know.
So we have them. That's going to be part of the build out. We've been trying to build it in house. And it just hasn't been high enough on the priority list. We have shirts. We have everything. I'll reach out to you after this. We'll set that up. But
cool.
But on a bigger point, if anybody listening to this wants to get a shirt and support Pennsylvania breweries, one of the things we did when the shutdown started is right away we designed a special edition T-shirt specifically to support Pennsylvania breweries during the shutdown. And it's supporting Pennsylvania craft beer, a Pennsylvania tradition is the shirt. It's pretty neat. Our designer did a great job on it. And the way that it works is every T-shirt you buy, you get a $10 Pennsylvania brewery gift card included. You can pick any brewery you want in Pennsylvania. And so it winds up running just shy of $30, but you get it including shipping, but you get a $10 gift card too. So you're essentially buying a T-shirt for $15, getting $5 shipping, and then getting a $10 gift card to your favorite brewery.
Nice.
That is included in it. We started that in mid-April, and so far we have raised and spent over $3,000 at Pennsylvania breweries reimbursing those.
The
gift
link
cards
does say
them.
it's currently closed. You can't buy any more of those.
Yeah, I got to update it. So I'll update it. It'll be on the site, but the actual direct address, we changed suppliers.
Okay.
And it actually wound up being a better deal. But it's pabrewreview.threadless.com.
Nice.
So it's through there. But yeah, eventually we'd love to have it be in-house and just have it direct. We can offer lower prices, obviously, if it's in-house, and we don't have to worry about some third party taking a cut out of everything. But yeah, no, we love to do that. It's just a matter of scaling everything up, and I really appreciate your comments that you enjoy the way it looks and everything. But it takes a lot of time, thought, effort, things like that.
I couldn't imagine.
To do it right.
I do four podcasts, and I want to pull my hair out, and I don't even have a website. You know what I mean? I'm just uploading it on social media pages. So I couldn't imagine the work you guys are doing with over 500 breweries. It's awesome. I honestly think if you do use this app and it is something you use, throw them a couple bucks on PayPal, or if they have a Patreon or something. Like I don't mind that at all. Like if someone's providing you a service and you're a fan of it, like a couple bucks on. If 1,000 people like it and they do it, that helps the site grow and that helps people do their thing. I think that's I think it's good stuff. So
I appreciate that. But yeah, we're very deliberate about it, and that's why things take a little longer to get around to it.
So we'll kind of wrap up with that. What other question without offending people, but some other breweries that people should keep an eye out in Philly, and we'll wrap up there so I don't have you forever.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's no problem, but I appreciate you having me on. In Philly, a couple other places that sort of pop to mind. If you're not from Philly, you may not know this. Second District is in South Philly, and the interesting thing about them is there was a place called Nottinghead Brewing, which was actually in the same building, the same space that originally was the very first Samuel Adams brewery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which started in Philly, technically. Jim Cook started that. And then they obviously moved in Boston Beer Company and went up to Boston. But Notting Head was a brew pub that came in there that was really great. And they shut down over like a rent dispute or something like that. And some people may not know, Second District Brewing in South Philly is the owner of Notting Head, opened that back up as a new brewing place, and they got a guy, and forgive me, I forget his name, but a brewer who was one of the higher up brewers at Dogfish Head, and came over and is doing at least some of their brewing program.
Great logo from them. I like that logo a lot.
Oh yeah, it's a great place, and they do a lot of different styles and great food and all that. So there's that. I would say Triple Bottom Brewing Company is a new one when you talk about new ones up and coming. And they're called Triple Bottom because, and I'm going to skewer some of this exact phrasing, but essentially they're trying to explain how they're not about profits. They're about social safety net and community involvement in neighborhood. I'm saying the wrong things, but you get the idea. Mm-hmm. And they're very socially conscious. They're very involved in the neighborhood and very much trying to use the business to build the neighborhood up. Almost even, primarily, and then hope that the profits come from it. But the good news is that their beer is great. It's been continually improving since they opened, I think, about a year ago. And they're in a little cluster right there where right across the street is Roy Pitt's Barrel House. So Roy Pitt's is originally from Chambersburg. They still have their location out there in Chambersburg, but they expanded to a spot in Philly, which is great. You like sours? They have a great barrel program for their sours. Honeysuckle Pills is, I think, just a really tremendous, slightly sweeter pills to drink in the summer. But you can hop the street, go there, and then go around the corner and go to Love City Brewing Company, which is doing great things. They do a lot of more traditional styles as well, lager and pills, and is it an American IPA that they call it? I'm not sure exactly how they phrase it, but a cleaner, crisper, clear IPA kind of thing, as well as the hazy stuff. Mm-hmm. Those are ones that pop to mind, and then
there's three.
You said you didn't want to hold me for too long, but now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, I got there's two guys doing great things at Sacred Vice Brewing.
Yeah, well, that Triple Bottom, that's cool because I'm just kind of looking at the map. You can literally, Google Map can be deceiving, and I'm just used to but Triple Bottom, you can do like a whole line. You can go Triple Bottom, Roy Pitts, Love City, and then if you just kind of go, maybe take an Uber over to Yards, it's right there too. Yeah. Yep. So the first three, it's literally across the street from Triple Bottom to Roy Pitts, and then it's literally around the corner. Like you walk a block, half a block down, a half a block over to Love City, and then it's what is that, 7th or 8th? Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 blocks down to 5th and Spring Garden. And Yards place, it's huge, it's tremendous. They just opened that in the last couple of years, and it's just a beautiful big space. So there's everything, and what I was going to say, there's a perfect contrast when you talk about experience. Mm-hmm. When you go to Yards, it's this big, huge facility, and they've got tons of tables and a bar and pool tables, and it's just like a regal experience, and it's great. And then if you were to drive up 95 and about 15 minutes north from there, or maybe even less, wind up at a place called Sacred Vice Brewing, which is in like the sort of like the Loft Factory District, and you got to walk through a hallway of this old building, and you turn the corner into what seems like it should be a loading dock, and there's this tiny place that's it's got to be like 400 square feet, the whole thing, including their brewing setup that's in there. Oh wow!
And and it's just this tiny, cozy, super cool, super neighborhood little place, and with great beer and great people and all that, and it's a completely different experience. They're both awesome. A really big cavernous place that's really well decked out, and then this tiny little place that's a hole in the wall in a building that looks like it was forgotten about 50 years ago or something like that.
We have that, not really like a hole in a wall type thing, but we have a brewery like that we just recently experienced, where you right up the street is Evergreen, and Evergreen just like this. It's in this like really, really nice, like you walk over a covered bridge over a little river, like, you know what I mean, and you walk in, it's table seating and this super high ceiling, fantastic beers, arcade, the whole nine, and then
you go to Mellowmink.
You drive down the street to Mellowmink, and you look at this really, like, I don't want to say dingy, but at like a strip mall and you're like, oh, this brewery here, like I'll go check it out, and you open the door and it's like you're in an upscale New York restaurant. It's beautiful inside. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Ooh, and then the beers are fantastic. I joked the whole time we were there. I'm like, man, I felt like I should be drinking with my pinky up. Like, this is gorgeous. I should have wore like a button down or a polo shirt. I look like a scumbag in here. Like it was such a beautiful experience, and there's attention to detail in that place is unreal. Like, but
it's
that
a really elegant experience, but on the outside, it's so forgettable. It looks like it should be a Domino's.
Yes, 100%. You know, that's yeah. They actually just did a collaboration together, Evergreen and Mellow Mink. I think it comes out next month. The peach sour. I love peach flavored beers. Like if I could find that's my holy grail. If I could find a peach anything, I'm gonna go for it. And then like obviously lagers and pilsners are my thing, but they're doing a peach sour with Evergreen. And right now for me, like IPA wise, Evergreen is like king of the mountain. I just love the way their IPAs taste, and they're just really really good at what they do. But yeah, I'm really excited for that collaboration. I love when breweries collaborate. Like it just gets me excited.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is, if you pay enough attention to it over time, the breweries that do collaborations are the ones that get better.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's like some big secret, you know, that when breweries come together, they learn something new from each other in both directions. I think it's usually a two-way street, and you realize that the breweries that are doing that and that are involved more often brewing with other breweries, then their own offerings are starting to get better. They learned a little trick about how to, you know, turn this taste into a slightly better taste.
You get creative.
Yeah.
And that goes with anything. That goes with music. That goes with, you know, Pennsylvania beer reviews or Pennsylvania beer resources. It's like if people, I have the term, I know it's on a t-shirt now that everyone's kind of going crazy about, but it's something I've always been a fan of. The term is ego kills talent. If you think you're at the top of your game and you can't take advice or talk or work with anyone else, it's going to be a hard fall for you. You know, like I just feel like you should always check your ego at the door and be willing to work and talk to one another. And it helps a lot, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's good. And that's the sort of put a nice cherry on the top of all this. I'm sure you've realized it. And as you go along, you realize it even more. That's what's such a cool thing about this industry and being involved in it in at least some sort of way. Obviously, we're not brewing beer, but to be around it and involved in it is that that there really isn't that ego. You know, people are proud of what they're doing. People are excited about what they're doing, but it's not that ego where they think ours is the best and nobody should tell us otherwise and nobody's nearly as good as us. It's so, with very, very rare exception, it's just so much like everybody learning from each other and building everybody up. And it's just cool to have. It was by coincidence. I didn't know that the industry was like that when I got into craft beer.
Absolutely.
And when it could have just been this cutthroat industry, and as a consumer, I wouldn't have known what I was getting into. So it's coincidental, but I think about it a lot, about how great it is. And frankly, it's a large part of, I think, what has kept everything going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I can imagine enthusiasm on somebody like you or somebody like me being completely burnt out. You know, if it were a whole bunch of a-holes in the industry, you know, just bickering with each other. And
it makes me support people more too, to be honest. Like, I like sports and athletes, but if you could be the greatest athlete in the world, but if you're a scumbag, I'm not going to support you. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of why I like when I started this podcast thing, I love listening to like Howard Stern interviews and Joe Rogan interviews and just really good interviewers when they bring the best out of people. Because if someone can listen to an hour episode, like if someone listens to the interview right now and they say, you know what, you know, he's a cool dude, I want to support him because he's so genuine. Like, you just, sometimes being a genuine person just radiates. Like, we'll just give a quick example. Like, we started doing the brew thing, like just kind of interviewing breweries, because we were just, first off, we never thought that would ever happen. We thought we were just going to be guys at a table and nobody would ever notice us or nobody would ever want to talk to us. And then they're like, Mellow Mink's like, you want to do an episode here? We're like, yeah, that'd be a fantastic, you know what I mean? And then like Liquid Noise, and then we talked to Harris Family Brewing Company, and then we had like 8 more interviews set up, and then the whole COVID thing went crazy. But we reached out, like we had all these really cool places that we were going to go, and we were super excited. But one of the biggest things that we learned is like with Trogs. I can't sing enough praises for Trogs because they are so helpful with every single buddy in the beer world in the Harrisburg area. Like they'll turn around and say, "Hey, do you need to use our lab to make sure your beer's not bad? Do you need a pallet of hops?" Like, and I'm like, "Really? They do that?" And they're like, "100%." Like we are just Joe Nobody's trying to make beer. And we go to a beer conference and we go up and talk and they're like, "Oh, you guys are from this," and like we don't even introduce themselves. They know us and they're like, "If you ever need anything," and it's not like they're just saying it to say it. They legit mean it.
Yep.
And it's just like when I hear that kind of things and I walk into a store and I'm like, "Man, I need some beer for tonight," and I see a Trogs on the shelf, I'm more inclined to buy that Trogs. I'm just being honest, you know?
Yeah, well, that's it. Sort of circles back to what I was saying before about making sure that you support the beer bars and the distributors that do things that you appreciate. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be just about the quality, although Tro's quality is obviously incredible. Mm-hmm. But it can just, like you said, just be something you appreciate intangibly. Yeah. I appreciate the way you go about your business. I appreciate the way you treat other people, other businesses. I appreciate that you're not being, a bickering, overly competitive business, and instead trying to do the whole floating or the rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. You're speaking with your money, and you want to make sure that it's supporting things that you support and appreciate.
Yo, this app, I'm gonna be on this your website here for hours. I'm just like clicking on stuff and looking at it and seeing, oh my god, this would be if we do like a 4-thing run and we just go to Philadelphia for the day. There's so many different spots we get. It's just so nice, man. It's
what we have to do. Did you know the app Hop Plotter?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I said, did you know it? Because it's an unfortunate story. It was two people I don't know super well, so I'm just sort of speculating based on what I know. But it was 2 or 3 people that were doing it, and they had it sort of the same way as us, but it was I think international. It was definitely national, maybe international, and they had it so that you could set up a road trip. You could create a road trip based on where you were going to start and where you were going to end, mm-hmm. and then see all the breweries along the way and slot them into your itinerary, and it would show you how long it would take if you went to each of those breweries and whether they were going to be open at the time you would be going through, at certain times. And it was super great. It was super functional and exactly what you're talking about, being able to do the logistics for you of just sliding them in and being like, oh, we can't go to that one because it's not going to be open by the time we were passing through. And it was a passion project for the most part, and they just moved on to other things in their life. So the reason I mention it is because that's something that, don't hold me to a time limit, but that's something that we have on our priority list, is to be able to do something like that, where it can be
expand outside of Pennsylvania.
Oh no! I meant the road trip functionality.
Yeah.
To be able to have people slide in. Different places and where they're going to be. Mm-hmm. Same thing, if you're going for work, and you're like, I think I'm going to be done around this time, where can I go on my way back? What's going to, so you can look at the map like you're doing, and it's great. You can visually see it and you can mentally look at where you're going to be driving. But to be able to have it actually mapped out, plotted out, Hop Plotter,
yeah,
and do it that way is something we're thinking about. But
I think a cool feature too, obviously it'd be really hard for you guys to do, but even if breweries did, I know Facebook posts and stuff are helpful, but I love the idea of notifications. So if my phone were to beep and say, hey, new beer alert, Mellow Mink's releasing this beer tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
Right.
I just think that would be so helpful for even people like me, especially who have a lot going on, and I could easily oh my god, that beer came out, and that was last week, it's gone. Crap, I missed it. You know what I mean? Because the way Facebook works is sometimes they just bury a post because it may be posted at 3 o'clock in the morning and you don't see it. It's just so you could easily lose track of that, and to be on social media, to be on your phone all day and searching all these different platforms, sometimes a quick notification to be like, hey, new beer today, or new beer tomorrow, come on out. You know what I mean? That would be helpful too. Yeah.
Yeah, but and so we have sort of the most rudimentary of those things, right? We've got the bases covered, some of them more complicated than others. And so talking about going to different places and knowing that they'll be open, we have a filter. I forget if we hit it or not. I guess we must have because of the current shutdown. Mm-hmm. But there's a filter on the map that you can click, and it only shows you breweries that are open exactly at that moment.
Oh wow.
right?
Oh
So
yeah, I
if you're
did see
like,
that.
I'm
Yeah.
looking to go to a brewery right now, it won't work now because we took the hours off,
Yeah.
so there's no reference point for them. But hey, listen, I've just decided I want to go out now. Hey, it's Tuesday night. Which breweries are open on a Tuesday night, or what time is this brewery open till on a Saturday night? I want to stay out late, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So we'd like to build that functionality to be able to see, are they open on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock, even though that's not right now.
Yeah.
That's the more complicated thing. But to your point about having the push notifications, it's the same thing as we have the events calendar, which right now is either empty or irrelevant because whatever recurring events may still be on there, like weekly trivia nights and stuff, are obviously not going forward at the moment. But yeah, so we normally have that pack, particularly with can releases, right? So we have that covered. But you're absolutely right. We have it so you can filter it by type of event, whether it's a can release or whether it's a trivia night or anything. You can filter it by which county or by a specific brewery, right? So you can bring up exactly what and where you want to do it. But yeah, I think you're totally on it. Is that a push notification is as great as it is. I'll sing our own praises. As great as it is that you can filter the calendar pretty specifically, you still have to actively go in and be looking to do that. Whereas being able to get the push notification, you weren't even thinking about it, or if you were thinking about it, you forgot about it because there's 1,000 other things to do.
Yeah.
I think it's great, and ideally, what you would want is to have a section where people could say, "Hey, I want to subscribe to certain breweries, or even certain types of events." So like, I don't want to hear about all of Mellow Mink's events. Maybe I want to hear about their releases,
Yeah.
just their
Under
beer
release.
releases.
Yeah.
Or hear about all of them, or get a push notification for everything in Schuylkill County. I don't know how crazy people want to get with push notifications, but if it's all customizable, then you basically just say, hey, listen, whenever this event is added or whenever it's coming up, we can push something through to you. I think it'd be great. So we're like I said, we're excited at how much it can expand and how many features we can plug into it, hopefully without making it, like we talked about before, like this big distracting thing. Hopefully it all can stay pretty refined,
Yeah.
but still have the complexities. But it's a matter of time in general, but also time to be careful and do it right and be deliberate about it. Like I said, the last thing we want to do is just throw something together haphazardly and not have it work correctly. Not only is that a bummer for the consumer, but it can really negatively affect the breweries, and that's what we are very, very careful about. Yeah, so we don't need like a can release notice coming out a day early, or something like that, and they've got a line or whatever it may be, people showing up disappointed.
Yeah.
That's a disaster. So we just try to check all the boxes and do things slowly but surely.
Yeah, my last question. Obviously, you can't really see it with the site; everything's stripped back. I know this is something I'm just learning about too, and my dad really been doing. And I know there's a big page of it we just found out about called, I think it's Bikes and Brews. But a lot of these breweries too have bike trails. Is that something you guys ever looked into? Like where if someone's a bike rider, they can like a trail goes from one brewery to another.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, we've looked into it, and yes, it's a great idea. The technical answer is no, we haven't implemented it yet. And what it would probably look like, or make the most sense, would be an overlay for the map, right? Is to overlay. We have overlays now for different regions that we never really like fully fleshed out. I think we might have counties overlay, but things like that if they're not attached to anything, then it's like, okay, I already know what counties everything is. So we haven't done a lot of that for the consumer yet, but yeah, we've thought about it. We definitely would be willing to do that, where you say, hey, listen, show me all the bike trails, and it just highlights all the bike trails in the whole state. And you can look, are these near the brewery? Are they not near the brewery? And hopefully to do it really well, it would have some sort of confirmation with the brewery to confirm that, hey, on a map, it looks like that kind of goes near us, but it's really inconvenient to get from there to here. So we would make sure that there's no confusion, that it either, like down by us, the Schuylkill River Trail, funny that it's called the Schuylkill River Trail, but nowhere near you up in Schuylkill County. But it runs right up the river and literally backs up to Conshohocken Brewing's original location, to the point where like you're on the trail, you step off just to like put your bike somewhere, and then you're already pretty much walking up the stairs to the deck of Conshohocken Brewing.
Oh wow.
So something like that is great, but then there's other ones where the trail kind of looks like it's near it, but there's like a highway in between or something that you didn't know you couldn't walk across. We'd want to be careful about stuff like that.
Yeah. And then the last question I have, I know I don't really know the news on it totally, but I know for a while there they were talking about shutting down and they were done. Correct me if I say the name wrong. Is it the Stouds or
Yeah, Stouts Brewing. Yeah, so I don't have any inside
because someone
information on
someone
it.
said I guess they were talking about closing and then they said, you know what, no, we're not now. Like they're keeping it.
Yeah, so it's kind of both, and I won't pretend to know exactly all the details, but my understanding of it was they announced that they were closing, but also not very quietly also mentioned they were open to a buyer kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think sort of testing the waters to a certain degree.
I
But they were going to
recently just
keep.
fell in love with them. Like I love their beer, and they're like,
Oh yeah, well if you're a Pils guy, if you're like a lager and Pils
yeah,
kind of guy, they do that style really well, which is part of the reason they've been struggling because the whole industry overall just isn't as into that stuff as it
they
used to
have a
be.
really good triple IPA too.
Well, right, and so they've shifted. They shifted later than everyone else, right? So
Yeah.
they've shifted now. They've got decent things. They came out with even a hoppy kind of hazy pilsner,
Hmm.
So they started making the shift, but it was a little past the wave. Um, but yeah, so the restaurant, if you've ever been, they run a restaurant there as well, and the Black Angus restaurant, and they had said at the time they have an antique shop there too. They had said at the time, well, we're gonna stop being a brewery, but we're still gonna run the restaurant and the antique shop. And that obviously was an earthquake through the whole industry nationally. I mean, because Stouts is like an OG
Yeah.
nationally, not just here in Pennsylvania, and
And
that sent
one
a
of the
lot of
first
ripple
one of the
effects.
first female breweries, right? Like she's like the
She was the first head female brewer post-prohibition
yeah.
in America. Yeah, I mean it's that big of a deal, and at some point, I won't pretend to know how long it was afterward, but at some point it came out that they had decided, or at least as far as I'm aware, had decided that they were going to keep brewing just on site. They were going to stop packaging. They weren't going to be as big a brewery that, shipped and distributed
Yeah.
and was, I think I should know this, but I'm not sure if they were outside of Pennsylvania or not in terms of their distribution. I imagine they were.
I only ever
Um,
had their beer. We used to always go to Reading Royals games, the hockey
right,
team, and they
right.
have a whole stand set up there. And I'm not
Yes.
sure who the lady who's the older lady who runs the stand. I don't know if it's like I said. I don't like if I'm like the same thing. If I see a football player in a helmet and he took the helmet off, I wouldn't know. Like so, I'm the same way with my beer. Like if I mean I know who Dick Yingling is. That's probably like one of the only ones, or
Right,
like the ones I've recently met. Like you know what I mean, like from different breweries. But
right,
if
right,
someone
right,
said like, hey, that's the head brewer of Trogs, I wouldn't, or the owner of Trogs, I would never know. Like I just don't.
right.
I don't look into it like that. So I don't know if she's related to them. I know it's a little old lady who runs a stand at the hockey games, but you buy this Reading Royals cup, and it's like a $20 cup, and you get your first beer in the cup. And then when you come back for refills, they're only $9, whatever beer you want. And it's a
Right.
huge, huge cup. So I remember I just go the first one, I'm like, I'll try your triple IPA. I'm like, that's fantastic. And then I buy the cup the first time, then I go back and $9 for this huge 22-ounce beer. By
Yeah.
the third period, you're rocking. You're having the greatest time of your life.
That's a great deal. But yeah, so I don't know. I think that the truth is that they have sort of fluctuated and certainly understandably, I think.
Yeah,
It's a big move and no offense to her, but she's getting to an age where she would certainly have every right to retire and no one question it. And
absolutely.
there's always a bit of that when you talk about athletes, the people who retire, and then I think there's always that little bit of that was a big part of my life. That was a bit, so I'm speculating, but I would imagine that there was a certain amount of satisfaction that she probably deservedly got from all of the outpouring of support and everyone saying, "Oh, this is such a loss." And I think it created that change of heart. So the last I had seen, and again, this is not super, super up to date and it's not insider information. The last I had seen, the understanding was that they would keep brewing for on-premises consumption,
Yeah.
right, at the restaurant and that. So, hopefully that part is at least true.
Once this COVID
Obviously.
ends, that is 100% one of my first places I'm going to go to, just in case things do change in a year or
Right.
6 months, where if that may never be a location again, because I've never
Right.
personally been there, but just the experience they gave me with their beer at a Reading Royals game, like I want to experience that before it's gone. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like seeing
Yeah,
your favorite
absolutely.
band on their farewell tour. Like, you just got to go do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, and obviously we can hope that they'll continue doing at least that for
Or
a
someone
long
picks
time,
up,
and
or someone takes the torch and runs with it. You know?
I was gonna say, yeah, or that they can re-expand, or that there's some sort of either collaborative effort or a buyout. Who knows how
Yeah.
it would look? But yeah, hopefully it would be more than that. But yes, at the very least, if that's what they're doing, you're absolutely right. You want to go and make sure that you get that experience and share your support while you can.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll kind of. Well, is there anything else you wanna talk about or plug or get out there before we let you
I
go?
do. I feel like I have talked enough. I've been talking and talking. I appreciate being on. I appreciate being able to speak about it. Obviously, as you can tell, we give a lot of thought about it. We care very, very much
Yeah.
about it. And really could just talk all day. We didn't even get into the whole rabbit hole of ratings and the things that we do to try to make them more
There's always part
fair.
two.
No, no, it's fine. No, it's just as well. I'm not lamenting that. It's
Yeah.
it's sort of like a thorn in my side kind of thing about that, because it's very black or white. People love or hate ratings, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? Why don't we talk about this for 2 hours? Because there's more nuance than just love it or hate it. And 99% of people are like, oh, just kill me.
Yeah.
But
I'm
yeah,
definitely open for that conversation. Um,
right. You guys seem to care about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're sort of that deep into it in terms of how carefully we try to consider everything.
Well, this is an open door, man. You are always welcome to come on and do collaborations with us. If there's anything, like I said, I'll reach back out maybe in a couple weeks, let people enjoy the part one, and we'll do a part two. Like, this is always down for more conversation. I absolutely love it. If we're ever in your neck of the woods or you're in ours, we definitely got to hook up and go to a brewery, and you can show us around your area, and we can come up and have some beers in our area, vice versa. You have my number, so definitely keep in contact, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
What you guys are doing is unbelievable. It's truly, truly unbelievable. You guys are doing fantastic things. I think your hard work on your website is paying off. I did test it on my web browser, my phone too. It works gloriously. So if you do go on your phone, go to the pabrewreview.com and then make a desktop icon, and it's just like you have an app without even having one.
We always joke that if you put your finger over the address bar, it's an app.
Yeah.
It runs like that.
Yeah, it really does. Like I said, you guys are doing an absolute fantastic job. And behind the scenes, sorry it took so long to get this together. Just everything kind of piled up on me there for a second. I want you to think I was ignoring you, but
Listen, man, we are in the exact same boat, and when you look, there are still brewers doing can releases and stuff, but we don't have them on our site now. It's too much.
Yeah.
Life is happening at lightning speed right now. We're keeping up with our newsletter, which people can sign up for. We do every week updates on brewery news and new openings and things like that. But yeah, we're pretty much just doing that. And then any new breweries, adding them as they open, which are obviously few and far between these days. But yes, it's no need to apologize, because everything's upside down. Everybody's just trying to keep their head above water, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we'll wrap it up there with Bangin' Beers Podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Remember, links below to go check out everything we talked about today, and go show some love to PA Brew Review, and go follow them on social media, and go check out that website. I'm telling you, you're going to be shocked when you see that map and see, man, I didn't know that brewery was that close to me, or I know what I'm doing this weekend. I'm going to this brewery and see what I can get. I'm telling it's fascinating. You're going to definitely love it, and it can definitely change your vacations this summer. If everything opens up, we get back to normal, and you're like, I'm making a trip to Philly this weekend, or I'm making a trip to Pittsburgh, this website has 100% got you covered, and it's super easy to use, so definitely go check it out. But we'll see you next time with Bangin' Beers Podcast. We're out.